Sergey. You too.
Thanks for having me.
I'm excited that you're able to join us.
Yeah, my pleasure. It's always a pleasure to be with the Ethereum community. It's a great community.
Well, we all love Chainlink too.
Thank you.
One of the things that I think is super exciting to me is that it's been 7 years now since the original Chainlink white paper came out. And obviously we've seen so many new things come out in terms of kind of how blockchains have evolved, just all new, entirely new concepts to just apply cryptography get better and better. And my kind of first question to you is, walk us through kind of what the very first version of Chainlink was to you, and is this the same future that you imagined 7 years ago, and if not, kind of how has it changed?
Yeah, so the Chainlink white paper 7 years ago was released this month in September. And then the token sale happened a couple of weeks later, also in September, on September 19th. I don't know what day it is.
Today is the 19th.
So 7 years from the tokens, for the public token sale. The first version of Chainlink was a single Oracle network that verified the ETHUSD price. That was the first one. So it's been always ingrained in helping smart contracts in the Ethereum community. And that ETHUSD price was then used to replace a lot of the home-baked, centralized internal oracles that the early DeFi teams were doing, where they had to make a market around ETH on-chain, right? And the basic problem was, and we had been working on oracles for a few years before that point, was that the centralized oracle in the DeFi context doesn't make sense, right? Because you're not really generating decentralized finance if the oracle is centralized. You're generating partly decentralized finance, but really controlled from a centralized resource, so it's not a big enough improvement to justify people putting money into it or taking risk and so on. So this was the fundamental problem. ETHUSD for the Ethereum community, for the DeFi protocols, literally you could count them on two hands that were any good. Like Aave was up here, it was called ETHLend back then. Oh, yeah. And there were a few others, and not many. You could literally count them on two hands. So ETHUSD comes out, and Aave is able to launch because they were in the process of building their own oracle, but it had all these trust assumptions, all these issues that got solved by Chainlink. Now you have truly decentralized finance. You have the smart contract part of the DeFi application. Now you have an oracle network that isn't centralized. It's truly decentralized. You have independent node operators coming to consensus, but they're not coming to consensus about block production. They're coming to consensus about external data. In this case, aggregating all of the fragmented ETH prices into a single authoritative price, the ETHUSD price, right? That can then be used to create these DeFi markets. So it's one Oracle network, one what you could call decentralized microservice focused on this one price. And from there, it kind of just took off because the DeFi protocols don't want to stop at one market. They don't want to stop at ETHUSD. They want to go and make a BTC USD market, which is the next feed, and then another pair, and then another pair, and another pair. And then it grew to over 1,000 Oracle networks.
Not in the same year, did it?
A couple of years.
Okay.
So like, let's say in
That's
2-3 years. So it experienced massive growth, massive scale kind of growth and scaling issues. And since then, basically the system has become more and more scalable and then added more types of data. So now Chainlink is the largest provider of price data, the most widely used Oracle network powering the majority of DeFi on Ethereum and other chains. But it's also the largest provider of proof of reserve. It's now the largest provider of NAV data to tokenized funds and identity and a whole bunch of other pieces of data. And so it started in data, right? But the whole thing with Oracle networks is that they're not a data thing. They're a computing environment that was applied to data aggregation as the first use case, right? Oracle networks generate consensus about non-blockchain things. And the first non-blockchain thing that it generated consensus about was creating a global market price that's immune to manipulation, immune to flash loan attacks, and then over 5 years in production, no flash loan attacks, no money lost from users, kind of highly reliable service, which is why it powers the majority of DeFi. And once protocols within DeFi reach a certain level of value, they start getting attacked and they ask themselves, well, how do I actually secure the protocol in a way that does work and they basically migrate to Chainlink, right? Which is why it continues to have the majority of the market share. And then since then, the Oracle network computing environment has been expanded to generate other computations, automation computations, computations about getting to identity. Now, you want to use mine? You switch.
I was going to say, can you give us an example of what is it computing on as an Oracle look like, and walk us through that?
Yeah, sure. So one good example would be random number generation for gaming, which has a similar pattern to DeFi, where without a good random number generation system, you can't trust the blockchain game because somebody could be controlling the random number, just like they could be controlling the price in a DeFi application. That was the first form of computation on Chainlink. Then we went on to automation tasks, which are simple off-chain computations that need to be reliable. So like automation is cron jobs. Smart contracts don't know what time it is, so they need to be triggered. Then we moved on to computations in the form of what's called Chainlink functions, which is the ability to call any API and then do a computation around it. So it's a Lambda-like system, which can just do arbitrary computation. And that system has evolved really, really far now. We'll be announcing more about that at SmartCon. There'll be really cool stuff there. And then another form of computation is actually cross-chain bridging. So cross-chain bridging is just a data transmission problem. It's a data transmission problem not from an off-chain set of data feeds or an identity service or a proof of reserve feed. It's a data transmission problem between two chains. But it's fundamentally the same security issues of how do I validate and generate consensus. Now, the way the computational system really looks is, let me get a few data points from a few different APIs, and let me do some pre-processing and some computation on them in an Oracle network that I don't want to do on a blockchain for privacy reasons.
Or just cost, yeah.
For cost reasons, or because the blockchain doesn't do those computations. Another really interesting direction is that Oracle networks are the interface to all external resources, including AI models. So let's say you wanted a smart contract to utilize an AI model to do evaluation of an asset or to evaluate a situation, whatever AI models end up doing well. And really what AI models do, in my opinion, for the Oracle network space, is they take a lot of what's called unstructured data that historically wasn't in an API, wasn't in a kind of definitive form, and they turn it into structured data, right? So the constant question that I've got over the years about Chainlink was, well, what can you really verify with an Oracle network? What about this thing that's unstructured data, that's a bunch of weird data that no one can really make sense of? And now with AI, maybe you can turn all of that unstructured data into pretty reliable structured data that is then fed into a smart contract, expanding what the smart contract can be about, right? So that's another example of the Oracle network.
Just effectively make it off-chain accessible, and you can have information outside the system?
Partly, but good example, AI models have hallucination. They have different, there's not many different models, basically. They all use transformer. So right now, decentralizing them isn't as valuable. But I think we'll be at a point where if you ask the same question to 5 different AI models, Oracle networks are a very natural way to ask that question, right? So you run 5 different AI models, 1 AI model on 3 nodes each, and then you aggregate the response, similarly to how you aggregate the response from multiple AI APIs about crypto prices across a few hundred different exchanges. And you get an authoritative result that's more reliable than any one single response from any one crypto exchange in the price problem or any one AI model in the AI problem. And so once again, what Oracle networks do is they're a computing environment to do consensus on non-blockchain things. Maybe you want to do consensus on price-related non-blockchain things. Maybe you want to do consensus on weather-related non-blockchain things. Maybe you want to do consensus on AI-related non-blockchain things. Maybe you want to do consensus on proving identity with zero-knowledge proofs, proving something about the identity without all the who knows what all the cool stuff you could do non-blockchain consensus on to expand what's possible. That's kind of what it's evolved to at this point.
And kind of let's kind of bridge directly that into maybe learning more about what CCIP is. And I guess in the last 6 months since we last chatted, what's happened in the world of CCIP development?
So there's been a lot of adoption. There's been a number of canonical bridge announcements where a number of really technical teams have evaluated the protocol as the reliable way to do cross-chain bridging. There's a lot more adoption in the TradFi world. So CCIP seeks to be a messaging and value transfer mechanism across both Web3, DeFi, and TradFi capital markets to get them to interact with each other in useful, valuable ways. Because the value from TradFi capital markets will be the biggest user base of Web3 DeFi. Because Web3 DeFi will have risk appetite to create bigger yield than the traditional world. And if even a very small percentage of the multi-$100 trillion traditional finance world, which believe me, that world is full of people that want to take more risk for more yield, want to gain access to that DeFi yield, how are they going to do that? So there's a lot of progress on canonical usage of CCIP as the official bridge, the native bridge technology of chains, because chains don't want to make bridges. Chains make chains. Chain teams want to make a good chain. Just like chains don't make Oracle networks because they have good Oracle networks from Chainlink about data and identity. They made native bridges because there wasn't a good way to have a reliable bridge. And they had to hack it together and make it like wait 7 days and takes 10 days. And like it's a secure MVP with some scalability and a lot of security with a lot of compromises. And a lot of those native chain bridges are now switching to CCIP because they do an evaluation process. And then a lot of adoption of CCIP and TradFi. So I think the next stage in all this is actually getting all the TradFi users of CCIP to proactively become users of the public chain bridges and public chains that are also on CCIP. That's a big deal. And I think the security of CCIP has continued to hold up. I think a number of other bridges have gotten hacked. And basically, when I look at the bridging space, I still see a lot of very weird security compromises. Many bridges are basically still 2 of 2 multi-sigs, often controlled by a single entity, which makes it very confusing when they call it decentralized on their website. So, and it's just like the same pattern again and again. So I think the pattern of security in the bridge space is not improving, and so CCIP has this very, very large advantage once you actually look at how the security works. And it's very similar to the advantage it had when you were early in the Oracle data space. And the Oracle data space was like, oh yeah, I made a DeFi thing and my team runs the Oracle. Want to give me $1 billion and it'll be good? Like, no, we don't want to give you $1 billion because we don't know how this thing runs that like controls every important aspect of the contract security. And then Chainlink appears and says, hey, here's a truly decentralized way to do this that's secure and reliable. And lo and behold, we reach a new level of DeFi and a new level of people being able to rely on it. So I think we're on track to that in the bridge space.
Awesome. I'm sure a lot of people ask you what are trends that you're seeing in this space. So I'm not going to ask a version of that. And the question I have for you is, what are you seeing from the traditional finance world when they think about whether it's working with Chainlink or just kind of their perspective of DeFi and crypto?
It's super positive. It's the most positive I've ever seen it.
Are you sure about that?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's extremely positive. And
That's good news.
I'll explain why. There's 2 very concrete reasons why. One is that the asset management industry, which is known as the buy side in the capital markets world, is basically the purchasing power of that thing. And they have a lot of leverage on people because they buy stuff, right? They're the demand of that world. This is BlackRock, Fidelity, Franklin Templeton, these people, right? Historically, in the capital markets, new technology adoption that is driven by buy-side demand from the asset management industry has a much higher rate of success because they are the demand, right? So they want to do something. There's some technology to let them do it. there's a sell side of the market which wants to sell things, which is the private banking sector and a few other asset issuance kind of models. But they're at they have to run around and meet demand, right? So one really positive sign is this is not driven by the people that want to sell things. This is now driven by the people that want to buy things, which is a really, really powerful, high leverage position in that industry. And that's been kicked off by BlackRock and BIDL very well. Fidelity's doing stuff on chain. We power some of Fidelity's production live funds on chain already.
Awesome.
With NAV data. And the second really, really positive thing is that the demand from their point of view is there. So like the BIDL fund, as a fund, based on the basis points that it charges, based on how it's performing, is a successful fund. It's viewed as a successful financial product that makes significant revenue for its issuer, the BlackRock folks, right? So it's a success. That's great. So this thing is successful. Why is it successful? Because the crypto bro DeFi money is big. It's big enough to make it successful. Like, this is the best thing you could ask for. You have somebody make a financial product. It is successful. Their competitors look at it and go, wow, that's a success that I would love to replicate. And they start doing it too, right? So now the question is, how far can that success go? How much crypto bro DeFi money is there to make BIDL more successful, make Franklin Templeton successful, make Fidelity successful? And the more of that money that flows into those things, which it will, because in certain ways those products have yield, have various superior qualities, and now they're on chain, so they're portable and they have all these nice on-chain properties people like. The more successful they are, the more everybody in the TradFi industry can point at them and say, listen, like, you like DeFi, you don't like DeFi, we're here to make money, right? Everyone's like, uh-huh, that's why we're here. Okay, they made a lot of money, like, why are we ignoring this? And there's not really much that people
You can't debate that.
there's not much debate, right? It's like, we're here, like, you don't want to make money? Okay, like, don't work in my digital assets group, right? And that's the third thing that's actually really positive, is now you have dedicated digital asset teams. So I've been working with these people, with the banking sector, for over 8 years. So even longer than Chainlink. So Swift, for example, we've been working with for, like, I think over 8 years, 7, 8 years. Second public pilot with them, worked with many banks and asset managers over that time. And historically, I would be dealing with the quote-unquote innovation people, right? So then, like, let's do an experiment. Let's think about it. Let's try something out. Let's do a pilot, whatever. Now you have people who only do digital assets. You have a dedicated digital asset product manager. You have a dedicated digital asset engineering leader. You have a dedicated digital asset, so on and so on, if that makes sense. This is really, really big, because those people have KPIs, performance, payouts, all this stuff based on what do they generate. So I personally think that if you just look at the amount of money that you're talking about in the traditional financial world, it's way, way more than our industry. Like, personally, I think the RWA industry will overcome the total value in cryptocurrencies. And then our industry...
Say that one more time, if we didn't catch that.
So RWAs.
RWAs, okay.
Stable coins, gold coins, real estate coins, whatever coins, tokenized funds, that will surpass the value of cryptocurrencies. And then our industry will not be about cryptocurrencies. It will be about blockchain technology being used for all assets, not just for this crypto. Cryptocurrency will be a part of it. It'll be a few $1 trillion of value, but there will be more trillions in value in this other format of RWAs, tokenized funds, all this stuff. And for that to happen, you don't even need 1% of that to go on chain. It's sub 1%, So you really don't have to be that right about this.
Because the sub 1% is still multiple trillions, and
yeah, it's
especially global markets.
In total, we're talking about hundreds of trillions. So You just need sub 1%. Like, how far can interest in cryptocurrencies go? We can go from 2 to 5 trillion. We can go from 2 to 10 trillion, 5x, maybe. That'd be nice. That'd be like, wow, what a success. This other thing is hundreds of trillions, right? Depends who you talk to, between 400 to 800 trillion, depending on how you value the derivatives market, right?
Yeah, I was going to say derivatives themselves are like 100 plus, but.
So it depends just how you value derivatives, notional value, this value, that value. But sub 1% of that is well over 10 trillion. And you have the biggest people in that industry starting to say, hey, why don't we migrate all this value onto a blockchain? And like they're doing it. It's happening. So yeah, our industry it's kind of like, right, the internet started out with email. Great. And everyone was like, email is going to kill the US Postal Service. That's what the internet is. Like, yeah, at a certain point in time, that's what the internet is. But what the internet really is information technology. Information technology is images, credit card numbers for, combine those, you get e-commerce, video calls, all this stuff, right? So the internet really changed from like being defined by email. I feel like the early days of tokenization in cryptocurrencies is like the email days of our industry. The e-commerce days have just started with DeFi, but the real version of our industry is going to be when all of this value flows into it, and it's going to flow in from this RWA fund tokenization traditional world at like, let's imagine it's not sub 1%. Let's imagine it's 2%. Like,
still double-digit trillions.
It's like, holy shit, 2%. Getting 2% of something, is that, yeah, that's hard. Is that achievable? 2%? Like, 2% is achievable. You can get 2% market share of something. Chainlink has well over 50% market share of something much smaller than the hundreds of trillions. But 2%, imagine it's 3%. Like, it's simple arithmetic here. It's happening, and it's going to be the way it is. So I think the people building RWA stuff, getting that synchronized with DeFi, are really, really in the right place. I think both DeFi and the RWA world are really going to connect, and Chainlink creates kind of the standards for that to happen. How does the TradFi community and the DeFi community agree on a settlement price? How do you send a stablecoin from the TradFi user on the Citibank chain to the Ethereum DeFi protocol to use it and get the additional 2% in yield on the stablecoin, right? How does that all happen? Like, how does that get sent in a secure way that both...
You gotta facilitate that whole transaction, yeah.
Right, by CCIP, then you need identity data. Guess who can provide identity data in a privacy-preserving way? Oracle Networks, Deco, so on and so on. So it's kind of just helping build this end-to-end set of transactions that are gonna define what our industry is about. That's kind of the project I feel myself and the Chainlink community is working on now.
So maybe to conclude, if you were to make any predictions on what timeline do we see a lot of these things happening at scale, how far out is that from your perspective?
So this year we're already on production with things like BlackRock and Fidelity's on production using us, and Templeton's on production. So you already see a lot of this really key part of the capital markets on production. I think all of their goals, in line with all those digital asset employees I just told you about, is to scale that. I know they're trying to scale that. I know they're looking for more sources of, DeFi money, crypto bro money, all this money, crypto VC money, whatever. And I think they'll be moderately successful at that. So you'll see a moderate amount of scaling of those kind of asset management folks that came in early during next year. And I know that a number of institutional users are starting to go to production next year that we're working with, and that we're in the process of helping get ready for that. So I think you'll see early production of the institutional side next year. And then once they go to production, the question will naturally be, okay, we're live with this thing. We have this institutional grade tokenized fund with like a minimum of 20 million from another institutional buyer on some L2 we made or whatever. How do we scale that? How do we turn we did it, we launched it, guys. Your ass is now on the line to make it a success. Hope you can do that, or else you probably get fired. Welcome to banking. So then the next year, they're going to have metrics of like, okay, we launched the thing you wanted to launch last year. Like, what happened? So 2025, they launched institutional stuff. 2026, they look at like the numbers on that growth. If that growth is solid, the party's really on. And then 2027, they probably have invested in the growth of that. And so the growth really gets going. And Chainlink kind of is in the position to help facilitate all that. So that's the optimistic timeline that I see for the institutional side. But the Web3 TradFi thing is already happening. And it's actually really good for Web3, because one of the reasons Web3 has some really horrible failures like Terra is because they haven't diversified the collateral of something. So if Terra was even 20 or 30% some treasury token or something, it very possibly wouldn't have failed at all. Because what really gets...
Because you would know what the backstop would be.
You would have a backstop of 20, 30%. The thing that really makes things crash is like the zero, right? Like, am I going to hit the zero? If you're at 20, 30%, you can basically assure, I think, a certain part of your depositor base of some safety. And I think that the Terra-like kind of crash thing is still a risk for many crypto protocols. Like, you have a bad day in crypto, and it just gets worse and worse and worse, because my God, how much crypto exposure did all this shit really get? Man, it got a lot, more than we thought. And then their failure leads to even worse crypto prices. There's like spiral of death, right? But imagine if you had a threshold, you had like a floor on that spiral of death, which is like 30 to 50% of this thing is uncorrelated with crypto. Okay, fine.
It just resembles a crash, and you know exactly kind of where this is a bad thing, but at least there's recovery.
We had 3 bad days, but you're never going to go to zero. 50% of the collateral is in various forms of RWAs. We had 3 bad days. You know, every year crypto has 3 really bad days and like a week of really good days. Welcome to crypto if you didn't know. If you want to be part of it, you can stay. If you don't, you can go. But for the people that know how crypto works, you know, you're not facing the ominous zero. So you're not going to bank run the thing and create another Terra. That's like a real thing for the crypto industry. So this is good for everybody, just to be clear. It's good for the crypto industry in many ways, and it actually, I think, helps the crypto industry grow into what I would see as its full potential, which isn't just more cryptocurrencies, isn't just more meme coin, you know, let's pump that fund meme coins until we drop. It's like, how does blockchain technology power the way the world works, right? Like, let's not forget what we're doing here. We're making technology that will power how the world works. That's what this is supposed to be about, right? It's not supposed to be like speculative funhouse time. That's a nice thing, and it gets a lot of money into the ecosystem for people to build things. But I'm not sure if that's what, you know, I signed up for 14, 15 years ago.
Casino is not the goal.
Yeah, that's nice, right? It's like there's a lot of value, and it attracts usership and attracts people to build early versions of things. It funds great projects. It gets things going. But like, the point is, blockchain technology powers how all value is created, managed, and transacted globally, right? Like, it's not about, hey, we're in this nice cottage industry worth $2 trillion, which is a great cottage industry. Like, it's like maybe the biggest cottage industry ever. Like, wow, what a nice cottage. That's like the nicest cottage I've ever seen. But that's not the point, right? The point is, how does this become the way the world works? That's at least what I'm working on.
Amazing. Well, Sergey, it's always a pleasure to have this discussion with you. You always end up giving also me a new perspective, and I want to thank you for taking the time and telling us about how you're thinking about the future.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Good to see you.